Hello and welcome to the Bulldog Blitz football radio show presented by Two Hats Ranch. I'm the voice of the Bulldogs, Rob Bentley, along with Sandy Golston as Ferris State gets set to return home, hosting the Wayne State Warriors this Saturday at Top Taggart Field, a 1 p.m. kickoff. And Sandy, the Bulldogs coming off a dominating road win, 66-0 at Roosevelt in the conference opener, and obviously an outstanding performance from start to finish for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, there's no question. And, you know, we've talked about this so many times, but when you're coming off a bye week, you don't really know. You have some expectations based on having a veteran team, based on having a talented team and a really strong coaching staff. You have high expectations, but I guess you never really know until you get out on the field. But, you know, the Bulldogs look great coming off that bye week right from the start. And they had a game plan coming into Roosevelt and things that they thought could work, and they were able to execute those things really, really well. And they kept the intensity high from start to finish, which is what you really like. They kept mistakes relatively at a minimal. And that was something that was really key to them having a good road win coming off a bye week.
Of course, Ferris State in that contest, 788 yards of total offense. We'll talk more about that, but a school record for the Bulldogs. Sixth time, I believe, under Coach Anise, the Bulldogs have put up more than 700 yards in a game, and the highest performance by any team in Division II here this season so far. The Bulldogs leading the nation in total offense and in scoring offense, 55 points per game. So certainly played some excellent football on the offensive side. Yeah,
I think one of the things you like, and I don't know, maybe the defensive coaches weren't as excited about it because of time of possession, the way that the Bulldogs were scoring, maybe wasn't necessarily as good for the defense. But the thing that you like about this is that we've seen over the years the Bulldogs can really control the line of scrimmage. They can control the clock. They can really run the ball with authority. And in this game against Roosevelt, we saw something a little bit different. The Bulldogs really came out and had the aerial attack working, and Wyatt Bauer was sharp. He was on his game. Cam Underwood was fantastic early in that game in particular, and he was able to get away a few times, 3 times to be exact, and get some big touchdown passes. And so the Bulldogs really showed that they can move that ball through the air, and I think that is really exciting as we look toward some tougher games that are going to be coming up on the schedule. And so I think the Bulldogs really showed a lot of what they can do offensively and really were able to feature that aerial attack, particularly early in that game.
Of course, the Bulldogs' first ever trip to Arlington Heights to take on the Lakers, second-year member of the conference. And you mentioned the connection from Wyatt Bauer to Cam Underwood. We saw it 3 times in the first quarter. The Bulldogs striking from 51 yards, 50 yards, and 40 yards to build a 21-0 lead early on.
Yeah, I mean, it was really great to see. And Cam, he's maybe doesn't always get his due, and I think we've heard Coach Anise talk about it a few times. This guy had 2 touchdown receptions in the national championship game. I mean, Cam is a big time player for us, and it's really great to see him get some recognition and to be that guy this year. And we of course had Cam previously on the show, and we've had a chance to hear from him, and we'll hear from him again. So it's really great to see Cam get that recognition and really show the skill level that he has. And great to see him and Wyatt have that great connection. Of
course, Wyatt also had a connection. Cam had the 3 touchdowns, but one of the touchdown passes went for a longer distance, 63 yards to Tarek Bauer, Wyatt's brother, and those two hooking up. We've seen it already a couple times here this season.
Well, it's funny because early in the season, obviously, a lot of attention being paid to Wyatt, filling some big shoes with Trinidad Chambliss moving on to Ole Miss and having some great success there. But we've talked about it a few times and having a chance to see so much of the preseason practices that Tarek Bauer is a really, really good football player, and he has been showing it this season more and more, and it was really great to see the brothers, the twins, to see them have another great connection for a touchdown.
Of course, the offense getting a lot of the due just with the way the game went, and the Bulldogs putting up 66 points. Wyatt Bauer named the GLIAC Offensive Player of the Week, also named the Freshman of the Week by the NCAA. Also on the Ferris State side, Eddie Jewett named the GLIAC Special Teams Player of the Week, 9-9 on PATs, had a field goal as well, 12 points in the contest, but got to give a lot of credit to the Bulldog defense as well. They pitched the shutout, 4 interceptions on the day, and they certainly had a big performance as well.
Yeah, they really did, and we talk about going on the road and you really want to control the line of scrimmage. I think the Bulldogs did a really, really good job of that. We bent a few times, but we did not break, and I liked that the Bulldogs really did a good job of mixing in some younger players, particularly in the secondary on the corners, that were able to come in and do some really good work. And they mixed a lot of players in. The participation that you were keeping, a lot of circles on those numbers, and so they were able to utilize basically everybody that went on that trip. Pretty much was utilized, and so that was great. And the thing that you like about that is that defense really took pride, even coming down the stretch. They did not want to give anything up, and they kept getting stops, and they got a number of fourth down stops that was really impressive as well. When obviously Roosevelt was really trying to finish some drives. A couple times Roosevelt maybe could have settled for a field goal attempt, but they were trying to make plays. They were trying to get some big points on the board, and the defense really did a good job of stepping up and getting some key stops.
You mentioned a couple of those freshmen. Obviously, the Bulldogs last year lost a couple key guys in the defensive secondary, Jacarvis Alexander, Linto Smith, both going on to Division I football, but you replace those guys. You wonder where the depth is going to come from, but you have two true freshmen out there. Alex Springs has been a starter here over the last few weeks, and Adonis Ferguson as well, seeing a lot of quality playing time, and those two guys have really helped solidify that back in for the Bulldogs.
And those two guys look impressive. I mean, to see what they've been able to do, Alex in particular coming in and getting some starts, and then Adonis is really, starting to flex a little bit and show what he can do. And so, I mean, the future looking really bright at those positions here. And when you're a true freshman on any team and you get a chance to play as a true freshman, you're good. Now, you're a true freshman, you get a chance to play at Ferris State, you're really, really good. And so it's really exciting to see what those young guys have been able to do early.
I think a question mark coming into the year, maybe if there was any position group where there was a question mark for the Bulldogs, could have been linebacker. And you really got to love the way Nolan Ziegler and Isaiah Byers have been playing at the linebacker spots for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, they have been really, really good. And you mentioned almost a clean slate in terms of new guys coming in at linebacker, and yet those two guys in particular have really filled in really well, and both had really, really strong performances. We saw Nolan Ziegler make some big-time plays, Isaiah making some big-time plays as well, and those guys have really, really stepped in and filled the void, and the Bulldogs are doing a great job of building some young depth at that linebacker position, too. There's some guys that we're not hearing about as much right now that are going to be players we're going to be hearing about in the years to come, and so really great depth being built at that linebacker position.
Of course, on today's show, as we continue the Bulldog Blitz football radio show presented by Two Hats Ranch, we'll have more post-game coverage from the win over Roosevelt, as we'll hear from Cam Underwood. Alston Ware had an interception as well, along with head coach Tony Anise. Got a great interview coming up later in the show with Drew Burton, the new offensive assistant coach for the Bulldogs, coaching the offensive line. We'll check the GLIAC scoreboard, the NCAA Division II matchups around the country as well. All part of today's show as we gear up to take on Wayne State this Saturday, 1 o'clock back home, Top Taggart Field. And Sandy, the Bulldogs this past Saturday matching the school record with their 19th consecutive victory. A win on Saturday would give the Bulldogs their 20th win in a row, dating back to that season opener at Pittsburgh State a year ago, and would be the longest win streak here in school history.
Yeah, I think the thing you like about that is when you have that many wins in a row, I mean, obviously you're probably making an extended run in the playoffs, which the Bulldogs did last year, of course, winning the national championship. But even with the losses that the Bulldogs had on their roster, the depth that they've been able to develop, the way that they've been able to recruit, they've been able to bring players in, they've been able to bring players up that have really filled in those spots. And in some cases, the Bulldogs have not missed a beat. And so I think that's a testament not only to the great players that the Bulldogs have lost, but the great players that they continue to develop in this program. And so that's certainly a really great thing to see, and just the mark of a consistent program.
Of course, Wayne State this Saturday comes in 0-5, maybe not the record they would want, but Wayne State, one of those traditional GLIAC teams, going to be physical, going to come in, and they're going to give it all they have. The Bulldogs are going to get the best shot from the Warriors, kind of like they've had from each of these other opponents here so far this season.
Well, I think, you look at the game last year, and obviously there's some incredible circumstances with the game being split over 2 days. But let's be honest. I mean, Wayne State gave us a good fight in that game. Both the first part of it on Saturday and then finishing it on Sunday. They did some things that gave the Bulldogs a challenge, and so I'm sure that's going to be sticking in the minds of the Ferris State players that played in that game last year. And I think it's certainly some motivation, but at the same time, I think these Bulldogs are really focused on one step at a time toward a GLIAC championship. And so the first step was Roosevelt toward that GLIAC championship, and the next step is Wayne State.
You bring back some bad memories from a year ago with that the lightning delay and everything else that took place at Wayne State. I think it was a learning lesson, especially for us as broadcasters. Always got to pack that extra bag just in case.
Yeah, I mean, the extra bag and medications or whatever you need. And boy, that was sometimes they say life comes at you hard. And that was one of the oddest nights ever that being spent at a hotel for a team. And so, but, hey, we worked through it. And, I think the biggest thing was to make sure the student athletes were taken care of. And I think the coaches and support staff did a really, really good job of that. And so we were able to find enough hotel rooms just outside of Detroit. And we were able to finish that game. And I think most importantly, the administration and coaches of Wayne State and Ferris State both were committed to making sure that the student athletes could finish that game.
Of course, Saturday, a 1 o'clock kick, part of a busy weekend. Ferris State soccer at home on Friday, hosting Grand Valley State in a 1 o'clock matchup at the Ferris State Soccer Complex. And then obviously on Friday night, the home opener for Bulldog hockey under head coach Brett Riley as the Bulldogs will take on Western Michigan, the defending national champion, to conclude a home-and-home series that begins on Thursday night down in Kalamazoo. So part of a busy weekend here, and should be an exciting weekend here on the Ferris State campus.
Yeah, it's going to be really exciting. I think for our fans, it's going to be incredible to see the atmosphere that we are expecting to have as Coach Riley's going to make his home debut for the Bulldogs. And so, there's tremendous energy around what Coach Riley and his staff have been able to do. They've been able to pull together this team. And I know they're looking forward to coming home. I mean, it's obviously it's a challenge when you face the defending national champions and you got to go down to Lawson Ice Arena this week first and then come back to Big Rapids. And for anybody that knows anything about college hockey, that's one of, if not the toughest venue to play in the country.
Of course, we'll have more of the Bulldog Blitz football radio show presented by Two Hats Ranch when we return here on the Bulldog Sports Network. And welcome back, everyone, to the Bulldog Blitz football radio show presented by Two Hats Ranch. Big thanks as well to Fox Motors of Cadillac and Reed City for their support here of Bulldog Athletics and our show as the Bulldogs gear up to host Wayne State this Saturday at Top Taggart Field. Ferris State coming off that huge win over Roosevelt, a 66-0 win. Sandy, we just had a chance to talk with Bill Shively, of course, a Ferris State football legend. He said in his senior year, the Bulldogs scored 142 points. Ferris State's put up 142 points in the last 2 weeks of action. 142 points on a 76-0 win over Rio Grande, and of course 66 points in the win over Roosevelt.
Yeah, they probably didn't quite throw the ball the way that they do now, and offenses have changed a little bit, but always great to hear from Bill, and he has such a great history here with Ferris State in this Big Rapids community, and the work that he does behind the scenes is tremendous, and he's always got a good laugh that he can offer us right there, and that was a classic one right there. Two games, back-to-back games have outpointed a game one year of his career.
Of course, he likes to stop by the sports complex, catch up with Coach Anise, and I think he's maybe played a role in some of the offensive play calling here over the years.
I think he would definitely claim that he's taken it, and I think he would probably have some friendly banter with Coach Anise about who's maybe his level of responsibility in terms of the high firepower of this offense. But certainly always great to have Bill and such a fixture on those sidelines.
He will tell you he still has that extra year of eligibility remaining, so we'll see if he uses it or not. But obviously was a longtime supporter of the Bulldogs, and we've had so many supporters. We saw a great crowd of Bulldog fans at Roosevelt there early for the tailgate, and obviously a lot of strong support going on the road to Arlington Heights for the first time.
Yeah, there's no question. We came in early, and we saw the Ahern family was there. We saw the Bauer family was there, getting their tailgate going, and they're doing their best to take tailgating at Bulldog football to a whole new level, home or away. So it was great seeing them, and for us to have an opportunity to engage them before. And then you mentioned that we looked across that stadium a couple of times, and just a lot of red in the stands there, and they were definitely cheering. It's really great to see the Bulldog fans support the Bulldogs no matter where they go.
Of course, first trip to Arlington Heights for us, first visit to Roosevelt, and some great hospitality. It was a nice venue, yes. And certainly they fit in well here as a GLIAC member.
Yeah, they've done a good job with that facility, and we had really good accommodations. You mentioned they were very friendly, took care of us, and it was really great to be there, and you certainly wish that program well. And I think one of the things that we talked about a couple of times this year's game and the last year's game is that they've come in ready, a little bit more ready than maybe some teams that have come in the GLIAC in the past. And so it's really good to see them coming in and competing, and you hope that they'll continue to grow and grow that program and really grow their presence in Chicago.
Of course, speaking of competing, the Bulldogs did just that. It got off to a huge start. Wyatt Bauer, 374 yards passing in that Ferris State victory, went 20-28, and the Bulldogs went to the air early, as you mentioned earlier in the show, and Cam Underwood, a big part of that, hauled in 3 touchdown passes, and we had a chance to catch up with Cam Underwood down on the field following the game on Saturday.
All right, here, Bulldogs with a big win on the road, opening GLIAC play with a win over Roosevelt, and Cam Underwood, obviously a big part of that. Cam, tell me about your initial feelings about getting this win here today.
It was just a great feeling. We all came in here with the same mindset, same intensity to just get the job done, try to shut them out, and that's exactly what we did.
Tell me about you guys coming off of a bye week, and what was the preparation like? Because you guys really seemed to be in line. Everything seemed to be working. Talk about that preparation during the bye week.
Yeah, preparation, nothing was different. We attacked every day like we would a normal practice. Again, we're going against the best defense in the nation, so we're going to get better every single day, and we're just going to come out and show it.
And then talk a little bit about what was working for you and Wyatt early. You guys really had a great connection early, 3 touchdowns early in the game. What was going good for you two?
Man, it was just a good connection. Defense couldn't adjust in time, and Wyatt's good at making reads and good throws, and that's what we just kept doing, and they wouldn't adjust.
And just talk a little bit about how Wyatt has been throwing the ball, reading defenses. I think people forget that he's just a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, he is just a redshirt freshman, but he's got a lot of guys that he got to look after and get a lot of experience from. So he's just blending in right now, and he's just balling out.
And how did you think overall about how the offense played? You guys rotated a lot of guys in, particularly on the offensive line, but it was just business as usual for those guys.
Yeah, we always got room for improvement. That's why we try to be the best. So we just got to keep going, keep playing. Everyone's going to have to get their fair shares of getting the ball, and we just got to keep working, man.
And that was Ferris State University football senior receiver Cam Underwood. Sandy, you had a chance to catch up with him on the field, and great to see him have a big performance in that Ferris State win.
It is, and I think it's, not that he's in it for this, but it's really good to see people recognizing how good he is and the work that he's been able to do. And sometimes he does not get that recognition, but boy, he really came out just on fire, and he was able to take advantage of some opportunities that he had, and him and Wyatt just had a great connection. And it was just good to see those guys really just hook up and take advantage of some things, and to show future opponents that the Bulldogs aren't just strictly a run-based team, that they can really throw the ball and they can extend the field. And that's not something that was lost when we lost Trinidad Chambliss. The Bulldogs can still throw that football.
Of course, on the defensive side of the football in that win, 4 turnovers. Alex Springs had a big one in the end zone for the Bulldogs. Davier Jones had one in the second half of that ball game. I think Isaiah Byers had one just before halftime. And obviously, the guy we also had a chance to catch up with, Alston Ware, had a huge interception down on the field early on in that ball game, as Sandy had a chance to talk with Alston on the field following the win over Roosevelt.
Bulldog defensive effort. And Alston, tell me about you guys coming off the bye week. What was the mentality like for the defense?
Coming off the bye, we were just trying to get, better each and every day. And really, like I said before, it's not about the other team, it's about us. So that bye week helped us prepare an extra, week. I know they're coming off a bye too, but, it's about us and doing our job.
And then talk about you guys as a defensive secondary. You guys probably knew they were going to throw the ball a little bit more. Your defensive line did a good job against the run. What was the mentality for you guys as a defensive secondary?
DBs, they pass first. We're a pass first team, group. And we know that was a passing team, so we're doing our job, really stop the offensive scheme, so doing our job is really a big part of this game.
And let's talk about yourself. You're still one of the young guys in the secondary, even though you've been getting a lot of playing time and doing some big things. But talk about some of those younger guys even behind you that are stepping up and doing some good things in the secondary.
Yeah, they just coming up and filling a big role, true freshmen. They also from Florida, so, the defensive group is really a Florida group. So, they got to come and represent really good. So, yeah, that's about it.
So tell us about that Florida mindset, man, because you guys really bring it, and there's certainly a lot of pride for you guys from Florida.
Yeah, that's really what it is. You know, Florida is a football state, so we just coming up here and doing our thing.
And tell me what happened on that pick. You got a really, really big pick, and tell me about what happened. What did you see there, and how were you able to make that play?
You know, that play, I drove on it, and, you know, he threw it late, and the wide receiver was in front of me. But, you know, I see ball, get ball, so I want to go get it. And I tried to return it for a touchdown, but, you know, couldn't make that happen.
And then lastly, just talk about this defense. There's so much pride in this defense, and you definitely wanted to keep them out of the end zone.
You know, our defensive coach is really big on us, you know, being the best defense in the nation. So, you know, that's what we try to come and show every Saturday, you know. And in practice, you know, he hard on us. So on Saturdays, we can do our thing. And that's about it.
And that was Ferris State University sophomore defensive back Alston Ware, who played a big part in that Ferris State win as the Bulldogs get a 66-0 victory over Roosevelt on the road in the conference opener. Great way to start conference play for the Bulldogs on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, it's really great to see that defense step up and make some plays. And, you know, defensively, when you're able to get those takeaways, I think those are huge. And Alston Ware, obviously a young player in the program who's made a name for himself early, and he's got a couple of those other young guys that are making a name for themselves early too. So Bulldogs definitely with some youth and certainly a lot of pride. And of course, Alston talked about that Florida pride and the tradition that when you come from the state of Florida, the expectations are high playing football, and really great to see him just continue to grow and not become stagnant here. And he's just continuing to get better and better.
Course, and finally, we had a chance down on the field again to catch up with the head coach of the Bulldogs, Tony Annese, to talk more about that performance for the Bulldogs. 788 yards of total offense and what was a complete team victory on Saturday.
Down here at Fieldside with head coach Tony Annese. Bulldogs with a big win, kicking off GLIAC play with a win over Roosevelt. And I know you have some respect for this Roosevelt team in terms of how they play. And you mentioned the word gritty, and I think they showed that again today.
Yeah, they were gritty against us last year too. And, you know, we caught them on some deep passes early. Wyatt was super sharp today. And I love the way, you know, our guys came, you know, after a bye week and came out and just performed, you know, really well on all sides of the ball.
And just talk a little bit about your offensive line. You mixed a lot of guys in there, but the nasty boys do nasty work, and they just kept doing what they do, and you had to be happy with that.
Yeah, very pleased. I think we might have, I don't know for sure, but it might have been a total yardage record for Ferris State, and has a lot to do with our offensive line.
And let's talk about the connection between Wyatt and Cam Underwood. They had something clicking early.
Yeah, you know, we want to be that kind of team that, you know, has a lot of explosive plays, and Wyatt's really good at it and performed really well. And Cam, yeah, I mean, Cam's been doing this forever for us. So, yeah, it was a great thing to see.
And let's talk about your defense. Your defense on the defensive line certainly did a really good job of, you know, continuing to run most of the game and getting some pressure on the passing. But overall, what did you think about your defense? They kept them off the scoreboard.
Yeah, just, you know, shut out, you know. That's awesome to see. There are times we bent but didn't break. I think we're number one in the nation in, like, you know, red zone defense. And so it's great to see, you know, that goose egg.
And then talk about your secondary and how they stood up. And they were challenged quite a bit. You knew this team was going to pass a little bit more maybe than they were going to run, but your defense came up with some big takeaways.
Yeah, you know, takeaways are key. You know, I think we lost one today, but we've been really good with handling the ball this year. And then, yeah, our defense has been opportunistic and being able to get turnovers, and obviously that's a key component to winning.
And then you're looking ahead. You got Wayne State coming up, and if you're going to win a GLIAC championship, you got to take it one game at a time.
Yeah, we, you know, this is, like I've said over and over again, this is a great practice team. You know, when you go to work every day, you know, it's just the way it is in life. You go to work every day and you give your best every day, you know, good things are going to happen. So, you know, our guys, you know, they're just super young men, work every day to try to be the best, and so this is a result of it.
And that was head coach Tony Annese right here, as Sandy had a chance to speak with him following the Ferris State win on Saturday. A great ball game by the Bulldogs and a great way to start conference play with a huge win on the road. And obviously the Bulldogs are going to have to take it a step at a time, but they took that first step towards a GLIAC championship on Saturday.
Yeah, and Coach Anis's instincts served him well. He had a hunch that he was pretty close to that they were at a record, and that proved to be true. But I think overall, Rob, I think he was really happy with what the team was able to do, and that they really maintained a great focus. And he certainly liked the way that they came in off of a bye week. They made good use of that bye week, the actual bye week, and then coming into game week, getting ready for Roosevelt. And so they handled it well. They handled it the way I think the Bulldogs would expect to handle it, and played some really, really good football. And so he would love to keep that momentum going here as they go to that next step toward a GLIAC championship.
Of course, that 788 yards, a school record. It's also the highest single game mark in Division II football this season. The Bulldogs leading the nation scoring offense and in total offense as we stand right now. And the Bulldog defense not too far behind in the top 10 in total defense. I think they're number 3 in red zone defense as well. So really doing an outstanding job, ranked among the top 10 in rushing defense. So they've put in their own numbers and their own stamp here on what they've been able to do defensively.
Yeah, I think one thing you love about that defense is certainly the Bulldogs, or to say fans maybe, had some questions. When you lose Victor Nelson, you lose Deron Irving Bay, two big cogs right there in the middle that really help control that line of scrimmage, that interior line of scrimmage, what was going to happen. But the Bulldogs have really done a good job of, not only filling that and having some guys that could really hold their own in there, but they've been able to develop the linebacker position, the level. We've talked about that a little bit. And then we've talked also about the secondary and some young guys stepping into the secondary, also some veterans in that secondary as well. And so really just a great defensive effort. We've talked about earlier a number of key fourth down stops that were big in that game. And that's all about pride, and that's all about getting after it. And so you were certainly happy to see that. And obviously the offense was just clicking. And really the Bulldogs, I think, establishing that passing game to complement what we know they typically do with the running game, I think was really a great positive to come out of that game.
Of course, that's a look back at the 66-0 win over Roosevelt as the Bulldogs proved a 5-0 on the year and 1-0 in the Great Lakes Intercollegiate Athletic Conference. We'll have more on the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show presented by Two Hats Ranch after this break. And welcome back, everyone, to the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show presented by Two Hats Ranch. Big thanks as well to Fox Motors of Cadillac and Reed City as Ferris State gears up to host Wayne State in college football action this Saturday, a 1 o'clock kick at Top Taggart Field. And obviously the Bulldogs coming off that big win, and part of another busy week is all the GLIAC teams really got going here in terms of conference play this past weekend.
Yeah, it's starting to get to that stage of the season, that second phase or third phase if you count preseason. Then you have your pre-conference schedule, and now you're getting into your league schedule as teams are trying to play their way to a GLIAC championship. And so, 1 week in the books in terms of conference play, or I guess 2 depending on how you look at it. But it's starting to heat up.
Of course, as we go back and take a look at the results from this past weekend, the team will see this weekend Wayne State was in action as they were in Detroit at home but fell to Michigan Tech 48-24. That game a little bit closer than maybe some expected, at least in that first half of that contest.
Well, then Wayne State also able to put up some points. And I think one thing that we saw from them in our game with them last year is that they did last year have an ability to put up some points. It's been a little bit more of a challenge this year, but certainly early against Michigan Tech, Wayne State was definitely competitive early in that game.
Of course, that game, you look at the final score, 48-24, very similar to the next game we're going to talk about. Saginaw Valley State beating Northern Michigan, another team still looking for its first win. The Cardinals win it 47-25 in University Center.
Yeah, it's certainly been a struggle for Northern Michigan to win games the last few seasons. And going to Saginaw Valley, obviously it's a tough place to go to get better. Saginaw Valley typically plays very well at home and put up some big points. Obviously, 47 points is the struggle, unfortunately, for Northern Michigan continues.
Of course, we had a chance on the way home to listen to this next game. Like to kind of tune into some games in the car, and this was the one that was on that we were able to find. Grand Valley State over Davenport, 37-14. The Panthers were right there for much of that ball game, but Grand Valley State pulls away in the second half of that contest to get the win at home at Lubber Stadium.
Yeah, I think obviously it's a rivalry game for those two teams, given the proximity of those teams, and so Davenport early, was really competitive. They were able to come out and they were get some points on the board, and at times Davenport's had some challenges in terms of putting up points, but they were able to early in that game, and just down the stretch, you got to give Grand Valley credit. Down the stretch, they were able to kind of weather the storm, so to speak, that Davenport was throwing at them, and they were able to pull away down the stretch, making some key plays to kind of stretch that margin of victory. But maybe a little bit more competitive game than the final score probably indicates, but certainly a good win for Grand Valley.
Of course, moving on to this week's matchups in the conference, obviously Ferris State playing host to Wayne State. Saginaw Valley State will be at home hosting Roosevelt, 2 o'clock game in University Center. So the Cardinals will host the Lakers. We'll see if Roosevelt can go on the road and have an opportunity maybe to play a little bit better than they did against the Bulldogs.
Yeah, that's a tricky game for Saginaw Valley. If you're Roosevelt, you just have to block out the game against Ferris State, and you got to go on the road and find a way to get a win. One thing about Roosevelt, there is some talent there, and there is some really good coaching. The Bulldogs just come at you in waves, and it was a really tough game for Roosevelt. But Saginaw Valley certainly going to need to play well in this game, but obviously you favor the Cardinals in this game.
Of course, before we get to the next matchup, we'll go to the last matchup. It'll be an evening game inside the Superior Dome in Marquette. Grand Valley State taking on Northern Michigan. The Wildcats, maybe a little more dangerous at home, but they've yet to win a game here over the past couple seasons. Would love nothing more than maybe to upset GVSU.
It's going to be a tall task to get a win over Grand Valley. Northern Michigan does typically play a little bit better at home. I think they typically, I don't have the statistics right offhand to back it up, but I think they typically score a little bit more at home, which I think a lot of people would say, yeah, that is pretty typical. But unfortunately, Grand Valley is just a stronger team, in pretty much all facets. So that's going to be a really difficult challenge for Northern Michigan to get that elusive first win.
Of course, you look at the GLIAC right now. Obviously, the Bulldogs, Grand Valley State, you'd have to consider maybe the favorites towards that conference championship, depending on how it all plays out. You got that next tier of teams, though. Saginaw Valley, we already talked about, and then a huge game between Michigan Tech and Davenport. That'll be played in Caledonia. So Michigan Tech, we'll see if they have enough to take on Davenport. Obviously, Davenport, very defensive-minded type of team, and they're another team that kind of typically plays pretty well at home.
Davenport does typically play well at home, and you might give Michigan Tech a slight edge in this game, but I would tell you, Davenport, they get after it defensively, and if they can get up to 20 plus points, they're going to give themselves a chance to win that game. And so, a Sparky McEwen team is going to play hard. They're going to play well. And but then again, you look at a Michigan Tech team, they don't typically make a lot of mistakes. And so I think it's going to be a really interesting game between those two teams. And I think two teams that are trying to chase, maybe that spot maybe right now behind what looks like the two top teams, Ferris State and Grand Valley. So could be an interesting matchup there, one that we'll definitely keep our eyes on.
Let's take a look at the results from the top 25 scoreboard in Division II football this past week. Upset right away to start it off as Seton Hill knocks off number 11 California, Pennsylvania, 16-7. They were coming off a big win, and Cal PA falls for the first time this season.
Yeah, it's just it's feeling kind of hard to, with the exception of Kutztown, it's feeling kind of hard to get a feel for the Pennsylvania State Athletic Conference and how things are going right now. Seton Hill over California. Don't think very many people had that, but it is what it is, and that's a big win for Seton Hill.
Well, let's stay in the PSAC. You just mentioned Kutztown, number 3 in the nation. They defeated Shippensburg 49-0. No surprise there. But another big surprise in the PSAC where Gannon upsets number 16 Slippery Rock by a score of 38-35.
As I said, Slippery Rock as a team last year had a huge season last year and gave the Bulldogs one of their toughest games of the season. Maybe outside of the Pittsburgh State game, the toughest game that the Bulldogs, at least the toughest game that the Bulldogs won last year. And so, that's a couple of losses here for Slippery Rock, and Gannon getting them that's about as much of a stunner as Seton Hill getting California.
Going a ways back, our good friend Michael Blackburn, former athletic trainer at Ferris State, now at North Carolina Pembroke. His team defeats Erskine by a score of 24-7. Also going around the country this past week in the Northern Sun, number 10 Minnesota State defeated Concordia St. Paul 47-19. It was Emory and Henry upsetting number 22 Carson Newman 19-13. Emory and Henry, a team that's starting to make a little more noise here in Division II football.
They are, and for pollsters, people that do fill out polls, these national polls, and you're looking at some of those teams that are near the bottom of the top 25, and it's difficult because there are a lot of teams that are really, really evenly matched. And I think Carson Newman was a team that I think people thought was really coming on, and here comes Emory and Henry, which is also a team that's coming on. So a big win for them.
Number 9, Minnesota Duluth, all over Southwest Minnesota State, 63-28. Huge game in the Great Midwest Athletic Conference. 2 unbeatens, and number 23 Findlay defeats Walsh 31-10. Right now, it looks like Findlay maybe the top team in the GMAC. Tiffin in the mix as well. We've seen Walsh, Ohio Dominican, so we'll see how that league kind of all plays out.
Yeah, Ashland feeling like they're right there too. But that was a potentially a trap type game if you believe in that, with Walsh going and facing. Or excuse me, with Findlay facing Walsh. Walsh is a team they can get you if you're not sharp, but give Findlay credit, they were able to get a big win.
Number 19, Virginia Union topped Winston-Salem State 44-34. It was number 5, Western Colorado all over Fort Lewis 49-10. Number 21, Fort Hays State defeats Missouri Southern in the MIAA 28-21. And a big game that turned out to be pretty good down in Oklahoma. Northeastern State battles number 4, West Florida to the finish. West Florida wins it 31-24.
Yeah, that's a big win for West Florida. Northeastern State, pretty solid team, pretty good team, and they've had some success early this year, but give West Florida credit. West Florida came out earlier this season, they were looking really, really impressive, and they continue to play some really good football now at number 4 in the nation.
Number 13, Augustana rallied from behind to beat Sioux Falls 29-28. We mentioned the Bulldogs put up 66 points, 66-0 for the number 1 team in the nation. The number 2 team in the nation, Harding, defeats East Central 65-0. So 1 point shy of what the Bulldogs were able to do.
Yeah, I mean, first the Augustana Sioux Falls game. That's a huge rivalry game. That's a big win there for Augustana, and Harding is just. I mean, they just keep cooking. I mean, they're so good, so powerful, and some of the teams on their schedule in their conference that aren't up to that par sometimes have to pay a tough price.
Also in the country this past week, number 12, Colorado State Pueblo defeated New Mexico Highlands 59-13. It was number 8, Pittsburgh State, continuing to roll along as they defeated the Nebraska Kearney Lopers 24-6. Also in the country, it was number 25, Ashland over Kentucky Wesleyan 55-0. Number 18, Indianapolis defeated William Jewell 63-17. Big game down in the Lone Star Conference. Number 7, Texas Permian Basin defeats Angelo State, number 6 in the nation, 28-14.
Yeah, Permian Basin was not on a lot of radars real early in the season, but boy, they have come on and worked their way into the top 10, and certainly getting that win, a mild upset of Angelo State, certainly a credibility building win there for UT Permian Basin.
Also, a final game involving a top 25 ranked team. Number 17, Central Washington defeats Eastern New Mexico 58-7. That sets up another big week here around the country. Maybe not as many big games as we had earlier in the year, but still some matchups to keep an eye on here coming up this week in Division II football. And one of those games involving Texas Permian Basin taking on Central Washington. I saw the Central Washington team has put up some points as of late. The Texas Permian Basin team actually called them the best team he's seen in Division II football. So we'll see how that matchup plays out. Yeah,
that's going to be a big one that I think a lot of people are going to be looking at. So it's going to be fun to watch how these games start to play out here over the weeks to come, because we're really starting to get into the heart of these conference schedules, and so as the more you see upsets, the more it just kind of muddles things and how the conference championship races are going to play out. On the other hand, you're going to see some of those races maybe for example, Harding continues to roll, and I think they might have 1 or 2 potential hurdles, but generally speaking, I think you like Harding's chances. But there's going to be some wild races. Rocky Mountain is certainly could be potentially a wild race. Could be some things happening, for example, in the Northern Sun in our region, and we'll see what happens, how it plays out in the GMAC. You got Findlay, Ashland, nationally ranked teams in that conference, and so there's still some wide open races around the country.
Of course, coming up on Saturday, we'll have have the Bulldog Tailgate Show presented by Fox Motors at 11 a.m. We'll run down all the matchups on Saturday during the Tailgate Show, heading into another big day here in Division II football. That'll be followed by the Johnson Automotive pregame show from back upstairs at noon with kickoff set for 1 o'clock on Saturday. The Bulldogs and Wayne State in conference play. We'll take a quick break. Back with more of the Bulldog Blitz football radio show after this timeout on the Bulldog Sports Network. And welcome back, everyone, to the Bulldog Blitz football radio show presented by Two Hats Ranch. Rob Bentley and Sandy Golston with you, and we're joined now by Ferris State University football assistant coach Drew Burton. And Coach, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate you having me on.
Obviously, new to Ferris State this year. Just what's the transition kind of been like for you coming on staff here with the Bulldogs?
Yeah, and anytime you do these things, there's a lot of chaos, and got a family and wife and little girls got to change schools and some of those things. But man, getting a chance to come to Ferris and work for TA and be a Bulldog is something I've really always wanted to do since I got into coaching. So I just kept thinking to myself, man, I get to wake up every day and be a Bulldog. And so that part of it's been awesome. And we're moved and we're settled, and, little girl's settled in school, and my wife's used to the commute, and dad lives with us. He's settled. So it's honestly, was really chaotic there for a while, but it's been really good to finally get settled and just focus on football.
Maybe talk a little bit about your background and just how you became a Bulldog and got here to Ferris State.
Sure. So, played at GVSU for Steve Brocklebank, 2003 to 2006. And that's kind of a dirty word. So I have to, it's where I played. I can't fake it. But, so got into coaching, first coaching job, 2009, Grand Haven High School, was the defense line coach for Mike Farley, who's still a good friend. And they got a chance to get into the college game, and was a graduate assistant, was the offensive line coach at Wisconsin Stevens Point, was there for 4 years, got promoted, became a full-time coach. We had my daughter. So the pressure to come back to Michigan once we had our little girl was something that we really looked hard at jobs in Michigan, so got a chance to go be the offense coordinator at Alma College, 2014 to 2017. When they got there, had only won 4 football games, in the last 3 seasons. So that was something that, we won 5 the second year and 7 the third year, and kind of righted the ship and things like that. And they got a chance to go to Saginaw Valley and get back to the GLIAC in 2018, coming off of 4 consecutive non-winning seasons. So, went 8-3 that first year, and then went 7-4. Obviously had some battles with the Bulldogs during those periods of time. Didn't win any of those, which is typical, I guess, right? But, so got a really unique opportunity 2022 in the spring. After the spring, really felt like that was our best team at SVSU. And former SVSU athletic director was the athletic director at Powers Catholic. And so, they called and said, do you have any interest in the head job? And we talked a little bit, and didn't necessarily, we had kind of built that thing. It had been quite a process to get that thing to where it was. And you remember that 2022 team at SVSU was a really good team. And, they called and we said no. And they said, well, what if we get some more money? And we said, I appreciate it, but no. And we kind of went back and forth 3 or 4 different times. And eventually it was like, man, this is where we're being pushed to go and to do. And so went there for a year, had a blast, loved it. Building was awesome. People were awesome. Dusty Buer got the Northwood job, and, that was like 15 minutes from my house. I was driving like 56 miles down to Powers each way. So that was quite a process. And so got to be involved in that rebuild. The previous 5 years at Northwood had won like 5 conference football games in 5 years, made a coaching change. So this was an opportunity to kind of get in at the beginning and build something. And so, man, had just a blast working for Dusty and for those guys. And we won 5 conference games that first year, and then had our first winning season in 2024 since 2017. And so, and they're killing it again this year. And that was always kind of the process of, man, when things get really, really good, sometimes we get an opportunity to leave. And so this is my very unique opportunity to come to Ferris, and obviously coach an offensive line that, we think is really, really good, and off the success that coach has had and things like that. But it's a destination job, in the coaching profession. And obviously, TA can't go find all the programs of people that have beat him and because they didn't lose that much, right? So obviously had some, that 2021 year, we had a pretty good, Tommy Scott ran the ball and did some of those things. And so we were able to catch his eye by doing some positive things at some of the other stops, and very fortunate, grateful, blessed to get a chance to come to Ferris and to be a Bulldog this summer. So.
Before I give it off to Sandy here, obviously you mentioned that offensive line and leading that offensive line. How much has that helped the transition, having some of those veteran guys and some of those guys that have kind of been around the program?
Sure. And, we got 3 returning starters, but Ben played a ton, right? Ben Przdula, our left guard, and Dane played a ton last year, and Andrew DeVries played a ton. And some of these guys, so in addition to having the 3 returning starters, you have a bunch of guys that played a bunch of football. And obviously, we're always better coaches with better players, you know what I mean? So you got to give a ton of credit to Sam and Rocky and TA and just all the guys on the staff that have recruited such an outstanding bunch of guys and developed them. And obviously, we're going to continue to try to help move that process along as quickly as we can. So,
Drew, you've had a chance to be a part of some great cultures and building some great programs. When you saw the opportunity at Ferris come forward, what attracted you to the culture that Coach Anise has built at Ferris State?
Sure. And I think, honestly, West Michigan's a huge deal. My wife went to East Kentwood High School. Her sister went to East Kentwood High School. Her sister's married to a outstanding human that went to Rockford. So our whole family is over here. So this is something that's been a goal of ours for a long time. Obviously I played for Brock, so I know that, the leadership here is going to be outstanding. So I think anytime you get a chance to coach great players and be with great coaches, that's always a really appealing thing. I think anytime you're going through the process of trying to get a job, there's always some of the, everybody tries to make themselves really familiar with, wherever they're going, right? Like I'm sure that everybody that talked to TA about the job when Sam left had their whole family in West Michigan or whatever, right? You always try to familiarize yourself. And so, and that's our history, that's our background, but we got married at the Bob. So, I don't think there's anything, I don't think there's anything more West Michigan than getting married at the Bob. But, I get to work with Brian Rock. Brian Rock's forgot more football than I'll ever know. I get to work with Steven and TA every day, you know what I mean? And it's a blessing. So there's a lot of attractive things about working at Ferris, and all those things were certainly huge. I've developed a ton, a relationship with TA, and Steven and Tyler Shreve over the course of the last few years, working camps and just kind of doing some of the things we do as coaching. But man, every part of this thing was appealing. So.
And what's it been like? I know you're pretty active on X or Twitter or whatever it's called now. But what's it been like to see Coach Anise start to get more recognition nationally, and people are starting to see about the culture that he is building here, that you've been able to now become a part of? What's it been like to see him, get that national attention?
Well, I think, in the state of Michigan, I don't think the attention is really, and now it's national, right? So I think he's got so much attention over the course of, so this is crazy. I'm going to throw this back, but my roommate in college played quarterback for TA at Montrose High School. So I've known of, the legend of Tony Anise for really my entire time in coaching and well before that. So it's funny because we had the bye week and Trinidad's balling out for Ole Miss and stuff. And man, we're getting more attention during a bye week than a lot of people do during when they win a big game or something like that. Obviously I feel like, man, we beat Pitt State and that was a top 10 team. And, you hear more about Ferris State on national news after, during our bye week and things like that. So I think it's deserved, and I think, we had, you go back and you could talk about the portal and things like that. Man, TA's had a ton of opportunities to leave and he's chose to stay. I think that's when our guys, the craziest thing is not some of the guys that left. The craziest thing is some of the opportunities that guys had to leave and stayed anyway, Bob and Tim, and there's all sorts of guys that had chances. But I think it just speaks to Ferris, and I think it speaks to our football program and our culture and him and how committed he is. I think, coaches, I think a lot of times we say we're committed to a place or to doing something. Man, he's, the proof is in the pudding with him in terms of how long he's stayed here and how much successes he's had and things like that. Obviously, I was, after my freshman year, Grand Valley, Coach Kelly left and went to Central Michigan. And after, a couple of years after my senior year, Chuck left and went to Notre Dame and some of those things. It's like, man, what he has done is so unprecedented. And obviously the continued success is not surprising when you know some of those things history wise.
How did the veteran offensive lineman, coming back here to Ferris State, Coach Rock, and how did they welcome you? How smooth was that transition for you to come in there? Obviously Coach Rock is a pro, like you mentioned, and you got some really good leadership on that offensive line.
Sure. And I think, there's always going to be differences, right? And I'm not exactly like Sam and he's not exactly like me. And he told me that, you know what I mean? It's just like, listen, you got to go be you and do your thing and all those things. And so, and Steven and TA just said, listen, you got to do this thing, the way you need to do it. And, I think, we have a lot of personalities on our offensive line, right? And Tim and Bob are big personalities and they're commercial stars now and all these other things. But I think, and we drop that every day, right? It's just like, it's almost a national champion. That happens every day in the meeting room, right? But I think what is so impressive about these guys is their commitment to getting better, right? And I remember specifically like my first week, right? And I just got here in the summer, so I wasn't even here in the spring. So these guys are still getting to know me and things like that. But essentially one of the freshmen said something to the effect of, right, hyperbole. I said, hey, you need to go left. And he's like, well, I thought you said go right. You know what I mean? And without, repeating anything because we couldn't on the air, right? Tim and Bob essentially said, listen, if he says something, you do it, the end, And so when you have leadership like that, when you have guys like that in your program and on your offensive line, things become so easy, to make sure that there's credibility there, within the rest of the guys. And obviously I've done this for a long time, but these guys don't need me. If I said that to Tim and Bob early, like, man, if I was you guys, I would hate having a new offensive line coach going into, year 5 or year 6 or something like that, because you don't want to learn new things at this point in your career. And man, have they embraced it. Man, have they been awesome. Not just them, but Jarv and Ben and Dane. And obviously you guys see those guys in there watching film all the time and trying to learn and grow and get better and things like that. And so the hunger for these guys to get better and to grow after all the success that we've had at Ferris State Football is nothing short of an anomaly, nothing short of unbelievable in terms of those things. And again, that goes back to why it's a great place to work, why it's a great place to be, and that. So. And
then one more question for me. Ferris State has been able to develop great depth, and for the losses that we had on the offensive line from last season to this season, and to have the players that have stepped in. How cool is it to be able to have that depth and to see when you call those guys, they're ready to step in there, because not just at your group, but just across the team, you guys have so much depth.
No doubt. And I think obviously that's always going to be a concern, right? When you lose some of the guys to portal, that we've lost and things like that. And obviously to, just think about how do we, it's a process, right? Mm-hmm. So like we have, are we 7 or 8 or 9 deep right now? I don't know, but we're going to be 1 or 2 deeper, 2 or 3 weeks from now. I think coach is so committed to that, right? Mm-hmm. Like you guys watched, Wyatt Bauer the first 3 weeks, run the ball 20 times a game, run for 100 yards and do some of those types of things. And then you haven't seen him run it that much, right? Because we're trying to develop as a thrower and as a quarterback and as a passer and some of those types of things. And I think you can see things like that across the board within the program. So, I think coach says that is he says that to the guys every day. Like, we have to grow. Okay. Tomorrow we have to grow. We have to grow. We have to develop. And however deep we are right now, we're really committed to being even deeper a week from now, 2 weeks from now, 3 weeks from now. You can see that, across the board at every position. So.
Coach, I know last week, obviously, you guys were coming off a bye week, went on the road to Roosevelt. That you never know when you come off a bye week how the team's going to be able to play and respond. But obviously, you guys come out, put a school record up, 788 yards of total offense. Maybe just talked about how they attacked that bye week and the preparation for Roosevelt last week.
Yeah, and the preparation was really good. And I think coach kind of says, man, it was good, but it's always good, and so you have so much competition, every day, whether we're going against the scout team guys, because the scout team guys were outstanding high school players and great athletes and things like that, or whether you're doing ones-on-ones things and we're actually going against our defense, which is, as good as any in the country, right? And across the board, player by player. So, all those things were really good, right? And we came out of the gate, and threw the ball over their head a couple times, and we worked on that all week. And I think just the general theme is just development. Guys are constantly growing and developing and all the different things that we want them to do. You didn't see us throw the ball over guys' heads maybe that much those first 2 or 3 weeks, but you're starting to see it more now. And so obviously we just, we want to force teams to prepare for as much as possible and be as difficult to defend as possible. And obviously that's a process that's ongoing, because there's still, obviously you win a game 66-0. It's hard to say, well, there's this we could have done better. There's that. But there are those things, and we see those things as coaches, and we're working really hard this week to try to get those things corrected and be better next week. So,
obviously, this week Wayne State, another kind of step in the process. Haven't been around the GLIAC. Maybe just talk about how much that competition means to be able to compete against some of the top teams in the country week in and week out.
No question. And I think when you look at Wayne, obviously that was a weird game, for the Bulldogs last year because you had to play it over 2 days and all those different things. But, man, they did some things that were really tough to, some variables that they presented for us that we didn't maybe play as well as we wish we would have and things like that. So I think anytime you have one of those situations where it's like, man, we left some points out there we didn't maybe play as well as we could have a year ago. Guys are really focused and fired up to be better, this Saturday than we were a year ago. But, you have so many outstanding players and programs in the GLIAC. Anytime you play a GLIAC game, it's going to be a battle. And so our guys are prepared for that, and we're excited to continue the process. We're getting ready to go out on the practice field here in a few minutes, and then get after it again on Saturday. So.
Final question here, kind of turning away from football a little bit. I know you're focused on football this time of year, but maybe give us something kind of away from football that you really like to do, that you enjoy doing.
Yeah, so I'm a dance dad. So my daughter's she's 12. We live down in Rockford, and so my wife is the head dance coach at Alma College. So they've won the national championship in 11 out of their last 12 categories. So, man, hell hath no fury like the one that we didn't win. You know what I mean? I don't want to relive that ever. You know. So, those are we're gonna go. I'm gonna go watch her tonight here when we get done practicing and watching film with the guys and things like that. But that's a big part of our non-football schedule is dance, and so I'm not a connoisseur by any stretch. I am a fantastic dancer, but in terms of so it just those are things we do when we're not in football. So.
Well, Coach, we appreciate the time. Great interview, and best of luck coming up on Saturday.
Thanks so much, guys. Really appreciate you.
We'll be back with more of the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show after this break right here on the Bulldog Sports Network. And welcome back, everyone, to our final segment here on the Bulldog Blitz Football Radio Show, presented by Two Hats Ranch. Rob Bentley and Sandy Golston with you. Big thanks as well to Fox Motors of Cadillac and Reed City. Ferris State at home this Saturday as the Bulldogs will play host to Wayne State in conference play at 1 o'clock. That'll be followed by a trip to Michigan Tech next week, as the schedule only going to get tougher from here on out for the Bulldogs. Grand Valley State, of course, the next home game coming up on October 25th. So some big matchups looming here for the Bulldogs.
Yeah, there are. I mean, and this is what you get when you're in the GLIAC, and I'm sure that the other leagues around the country are probably saying some of the same things, but things are certainly going to pick up. You look at Michigan Tech is still ahead for Ferris State in terms of a team that's been in the national rankings. Of Grand Valley is still ahead, and Saginaw Valley is a team that came in with some high expectations early. Wayne State's a team that played us tough last year. So there's some big tests ahead for Ferris State. Davenport's still ahead. So, I think that's just life in the GLIAC, and you have to be ready to play week in and week out.
The Bulldogs coming up on Saturday again. We'll have pregame coverage for you starting at 11 a.m. on the Bulldog Sports Network and Sunny 97.3. Of course, the game will be carried live as well on Flow College and Flow Sports with video coverage courtesy of Ferris State Television. So tune in if you can't be there on Saturday. Hopefully a big crowd. Weather still expected to be pretty nice coming up on Saturday here for the month of October as we reach the middle part of the month.
Yeah, I mean, it's still a great experience, and we've kind of had the, I guess you might say, the summer Bulldog football experience through the first few weeks, month or so of the season, and probably getting into that fall portion of the schedule where you might need a light jacket or that hoodie or something like that, but it's still going to be a great atmosphere, and we know the tailgate crew, the Gridiron Club crew, we know that they're going to be there and they're going to be having a good time, and it's always great to get the Bulldog family together at Top Taggart Field for Bulldog football.
Tailgate lots will open at 10 a.m. on Saturday, 3 hours in advance of the kickoff, as the Bulldogs play host to Wayne State, and Ferris State taking on a Warrior team that's still searching for its first win, but a potential record-breaking day for the Bulldogs if they can get that 20th win in a row. Would continue what's been an impressive streak since that loss at Pittsburgh State a year ago.
Yeah, I mean, obviously the Bulldogs got on that big run after that Week 0 loss to the Gorillas, and all the way to GLIAC and national championships, and that was really impressive. And then you go into the offseason and some question marks here and there about who's going to play at certain positions and what the depth is looking at certain positions, and the Bulldogs really took care of business in their preseason. Did a great job through practices and film and conditioning to get themselves ready to go. And big win in Week 0 this year over Pittsburgh State. Which looks like an even better win right now with the way that Pittsburgh State is playing. And, also a win later over Tiffin. That was a really good win as well. And the Bulldogs have taken care of business on the road. And, in Week 1 of the GLIAC, Bulldogs take care of business as well. And so, Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot of unknowns coming into the season, but so far the Bulldogs are taking care of business.
Of course, the Bulldogs, one of the themes, and we've seen it throughout the tenure here of Coach Anise, is getting better each week, and this team's been able to do that. You take away maybe that Tiffin game, they really haven't been challenged a whole lot since that game against Pittsburgh State going back to the season opener.
Yeah, I think, and part of that is that the Bulldogs have not let down. They've really worked and focused on getting better, and Coach Drew Burton talked about that, just to get better each week. And that's what it's really all about. And I think that's really not necessarily exclusive to Ferris State in terms of that mindset about getting better each week. And you want to continue to make progress, especially if you want to be a championship team. And there are a lot of teams that feel like they're championship teams, or at least a few teams that feel they're championship teams in the GLIAC right now. And their goal is the same as Ferris State's, and that's to keep getting better.
Ferris State taking on Wayne State this week as the Bulldogs continue a busy weekend here, and that'll kind of wrap it up for the weekend. Of course, coming up on Friday, Bulldog Soccer playing host to Grand Valley State in a 1 o'clock matchup. The Ferris State soccer field, that'll be a big matchup between two of the top teams in the GLIAC. The Ferris State hockey team, of course, playing host to Western Michigan, the defending national champions, in the home opener under head coach Brett Riley. Friday night, 7:07 p.m. puck drop. We'll have coverage of Ferris State hockey throughout the week as well. Thursday night, of course, the Bulldogs began the road trip with the home-and-home series against Western Michigan and Kalamazoo. Puck drop shortly after 7 p.m., so pregame coverage at 6:30 with Brody Kaiser and Brandon Worth. On Friday night, it'll be Brody and yourself, Sandy, calling Bulldog hockey, and then we'll have all the broadcast coverage right here on Saturday as the Bulldogs take on Wayne State on the football side.
Yeah, it's going to be a big week, and I'm excited to see some of these games, or to actually call a couple of these games, and certainly my hockey debut this season is going to be really fun. What the second half of that home and home, or home and away, however you want to characterize it, between the Bulldogs and the Broncos. Certainly looking forward to tuning into game one to get another feel for the Bulldogs before getting a chance to see them on the ice in person. That's going to be big. Bulldogs and Grand Valley on the soccer pitch, that's going to be fun. That's always any Ferris Grand Valley game is typically very, very fun to watch, and it's going to be a big game for Coach Henson's squad, and obviously looking forward to to being back in the booth at Top Taggart Field for that game on Saturday against Wayne State.
One interesting footnote I was able to find here, the Bulldogs get ready to face Wayne State. Ferris State quarterback Wyatt Bauer, of course, this past week accounted for 6 touchdowns, 5 in the air, and of course the 1 on the ground, and became the 11th, I believe, different starting quarterback under head coach Tony Anise to account for 5 or more touchdowns in a game. It's been every starting quarterback under Coach Anise since 2012 has been able to accomplish that feat at least once.
That's unreal. I mean, that's just, player after player after player. And obviously Coach Anise started with, the great Jason Vanderlaan, who's got just outside of this office right here, or studio, whatever you want to call it, a couple of Harlan Hill trophies out there, and another one from J. Rue Campbell. And there are a lot of players that did not win the Harlan Hill, Trinidad Chambliss, and others who are playing some really good football. And so when you see Wyatt become the latest in that line, there's just some tremendous ones, and Jarrett Bernhardt and Trevor Birmingham and so many others, Reggie Bell, that you could go on and name that have just made their mark on this program.
Of course, Trinidad Chambliss, again, we talked about him a little bit last week, but receiving all kinds of attention. He's been the first one to really say he began his career and left his mark at Ferris State, and obviously Coach Anise receiving all kinds of interview requests. You've probably seen a lot of them out there on social media, but great coverage, not only highlighting Trinidad, but also what this Bulldog football program has been able to do.
Yeah, I think, and obviously we love Trinidad, and we're so excited about what he's been able to do at Ole Miss. But I think his success has really shined a light on what Ferris State has been able to do. And so it's really helped to put some spotlight on Coach Anise, who is also kind of has the mentality of being an old ball coach that just wants to get out there and coach his games and just work with his staff. But at the same time, it's been great national recognition for Ferris State, and it's really helping people see what is being built here. We know Steve Kasula, a former Bulldog assistant who's now at the University of Michigan. He had some great words in an interview that we had. And so it's really great to see the Bulldogs getting that recognition.
Of course, Ferris State will try to continue to keep the train rolling on Saturday as the Bulldogs look to move to 6-0 on the year, taking on Wayne State. 1 o'clock kick at Top Taggart Field. I'd like to thank Steve Masters at the Sunny 97.3 studios for all his efforts with the show and, of course, our broadcast coverage throughout the year. Big thanks to Brody Kaiser for his production work. The president of Ferris State University, Dr. Bill Pink, athletic director Steve Brocklebank, of course, our entire communications and game day operations crews as well. Got to give a final shout out here to our presenting sponsor, Two Hats Ranch. Thanks for their coverage here and their support of Ferris State Athletics. Big thanks as well to Fox Motors of Cadillac and Reed City. Should be fun being back in the booth on Saturday, continuing to watch this team perform at a high level.
Yeah, the road trip to Arlington Heights, just outside of Chicago, was certainly fun. And you mentioned it, great hospitality out there from the Roosevelt staff. But it's fun to be back in our booth and just really looking forward to being back at Top Taggart Field and calling Bulldog football as the Wayne State Warriors come to town.
Of course, we'll have the coverage for you on Saturday starting at 11 a.m. with the Bulldog Tailgate Show presented by Fox Motors. The Johnson Automotive pregame show starts at noon with kickoff 1 o'clock. The Bulldogs and the Warriors from Top Taggart Field. For my partner Sandy Golston, Rob Bentley with you. Thanks for tuning in to the Bulldog Blitz football radio show this week, and have a great week. We'll catch you again on Saturday for kickoff at 1 o'clock here on the Bulldog Sports Network and Sunny 97.3.